What's going on, everybody? Today I got a very special episode for you. I'm interviewing one of my community members who just finished the journey that many of you are on. So his name is Herman Kayy, and he just went from zero programming knowledge. I actually just started watching some of my videos before he even learned how to code. Said he got inspired by me to give it a try, and just a couple weeks ago he finally got his first full-time iOS job. So again, went from zero programming experience to full-time iOS developer in a little under a year. So I wanted to bring him on to tell his story. He is a member of my Patreon community, part of my Slack channel. So I'd kind of been following his story, over the months. And then when he finally got hired a couple weeks ago, I said, we got to talk about this. And I think my audience would love to hear your story. So without further ado, let's dive into the interview. What's up, everybody? Today I have a very special interview with Herman Kayy, who followed a journey that I did a little over 3 years ago. So this is why I wanted to have him on. And he went from no programming experiences to just getting the idea like, hey, I want to learn how to code. And he just recently got hired on as a full-time iOS developer for his first job. So welcome, Herman. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, hey everybody. Nice to finally be on the show.
Yeah, I understand you've been watching the channel for a while. So one thing I always like to ask anybody I meet that watches the channel is like, do you remember the video that you first discovered me on?
Yeah, it's actually I was trying to get into Swift, and I actually had Bootcamp in my mind. And then when I was YouTubing, I think the first video I saw was how you went from zero programming experience to job, I think in like 7 months or something.
Yeah, that's actually my most popular video, like by views. I think that's like my most viewed video. So that's a common one people find me on. Yeah,
so that's like the first one. And then afterwards, I just kind of binge watch
nice.
Pretty much everything.
Well, thank you for that. So like I mentioned in the intro here, you just decided one day you wanted to be a programmer. So tell us a little bit about like what you were doing before, and then what was the trigger that like made you say, you know what, I'm going to do this?
Okay, so before this, I actually had my own company with like an architectural company with China. And it was fun. I learned a lot, but I just did not enjoy it because I feel like my creativity was stagnant. I wasn't growing. I think what got me into programming was one day I went to China for a trip, and the tech in China is crazy. It's insane. Like if you guys know the app WeChat, it's pretty huge there.
Slightly.
QR codes everywhere. Yeah. So I got really interested. I started looking more into it, and I was like, wow, there's a new language called Swift. It's really beginner friendly. So that's pretty much it. I just kind of hated what I was doing, wanted something that it was more creative. I had more control over the product, and I just got into it, and I just fell in love right away. Yeah,
that's the same thing happened to me. It felt like magic. I was like, wait a minute, I can just create stuff. And I've never been like the artsy creative person, but this is bringing out like this creative side of me that like I never do exist. So I can definitely relate to that. So you, so that's what kind of like got you interested. What made you like, was there a certain point where you're like, I want to do this full time, and you decided to make the leap? Or were you just like learning slowly over time and said, I guess I'll do it full time?
It actually started off with a lot of your videos. It was very inspiring that you went from nothing pretty much and to, doing what you love.
Well, that's awesome.
So I kind of binge watched like, a few of your videos. That was before I even touched a Swift, book or anything.
Wow.
I was just watching your videos, and then just afterwards I was like, you know what, tired of watching. Let me just get started.
Sure.
My friend told me about Udemy. It's cheap, it's like $5, $10.
Right.
They give you so much material. So I started off there. See how I like it first. I instantly fell in love. I bought one course, I bought two courses, and then I kind of slowly got into learning Swift. That was while I was still doing my business. I was spending maybe 3-4 hours a night just studying Swift. That's kind of the transition. And then slowly, I got kind of addicted to it. And I put in less time at work, more time into Swift, and that's when I sort of decided this is what I wanted to do, and let me just go into it full time and study. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So I was in that exact same spot. To me, I had something like drastic happen. Like I was in sales, and many have heard this story. And like a sale went bad basically, and like it really hurt my performance. And I just didn't like the idea of my performance being like dictated by somebody else's decision. So I was already learning to code on the side at the time, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this code thing because I look at it's like one-on-one, you versus the problem, right? Like the solution you come up with or the app you create is like from you. There's no outside thing that can like affect your performance, and that's like how you're judged. budget, if you will, if you're a good programmer or if it's a good app. So I loved that aspect of it. So that to me, I did have like a not crazy drastic, but I did have an event where I was like, that's it, I'm going programming full time. So for me, it was a clear line in the sand. But yours was more gradual, sounds like. Yeah,
just like slowly and slowly, kind of getting more and more interested, addicted. Just the idea of you type a few lines of code and you could see it on your phone.
Right.
That was a feeling that I never felt before.
For sure. Yeah, no, I
gradually get into it. Yeah.
I always say I caught the coding bug because that's what it was. Like I would just rush home from work every day and just want to like build stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. It was even work. Yeah.
I was just eating up tutorials left and right. Like you said, you did the Udemy. Yep. I went into Wenderlich, as I've said a million times, and just did like every tutorial on there. So I couldn't get enough.
That's kind of what I did. I did Udemy. I think I got into Wenderlich, the subscriptions.
Right.
I watch a lot of your videos. How I built this, he has great tutorials too.
Okay, yeah.
And then Treehouse. I did like everything.
That's the same thing. I did Udacity. Yeah. I didn't do Udemy, but I did Treehouse, Udacity, like Code Academy, like anything I could get my hands on. I just soaked up.
Udacity was great, but it was just a little pricey for me.
Yeah, it was.
$200 a month. Yeah.
I said this in one of my videos. It's like I don't think you should spend a lot of money when you're just learning. There's so many free resources or very, very cheap, like the $20 a month for Wenderlich or the Udemy courses. Like $200 a month is a lot for what you get, in my opinion.
Exactly.
But that's a good segue into, so you did decide you've been learning on the side and you decided to go to a bootcamp. Before we dive into the bootcamp stuff, one of the most common questions I get asked, and you've probably seen the video on it, is the bootcamp right for you? And the classic answer is always, it depends, right? It's a very personal decision. But from your perspective, why did you think a bootcamp was right for you?
So I did maybe self-taught for 3 months, 4 months. And honestly, it gets a little lonely sometimes. Like you're always by yourself. If you're stuck on a problem, you have no one to talk to.
Right.
You're never getting that full-on immersive feeling. You're just kind of reading a book or watching videos online.
Gotcha.
So my friend went to a boot camp for like a different language for web, and then he had great things to say about it. So I decided to maybe, let's look into a boot camp. I took a look at the stuff. You actually live there, and you're spending, 3 months with these people. You're coding. You're waking up to code, and you're sleeping to code.
Right.
You're building and everyone's there for a reason. So
let's pause right there real quick because I did Moeyken. I'm genuinely curious about this. So real quick, for those that don't know, I've actually never met Herman before. This is the first time we're talking. So this is like I don't know the answer to these questions. I want to find out just as much. So I did a boot camp, like many people said, but like I've said before, but I didn't live with people. So I'm real curious. Can you expand on that? Like this was just in San Francisco. I would go there every day from 8:30 till 6 or 7 at night and come home. You actually lived it. So was there did everybody quit at a certain time, or were you going all through the night? Was there a social aspect to it as well? It's real interesting that it's like a dormitory type atmosphere.
Yeah. So it's it's about 3.5 months. It's in Salt Lake City. So they actually have apartments set up for us to live in.
Okay.
We get up around
do you have a roommate, or is it you get your own apartment?
Oh no, we have roommates for sure. Yeah. It would be too good of a deal. I get my own place.
Right.
Yeah. I had maybe 2 roommates. Yeah, we're all in the same iOS class, so it's kind of cool. We go back together. We take the train back together and study together. So the class starts usually around 9 a.m. Everyone kind of gets together and goes to the boot camp together. We finish at around, I say, 5 p.m. I believe. Yeah, 5 p.m. But people stay till 10 p.m.
Yeah. That's
every day. This is constantly 9 a.m. start. We leave at 10 p.m.
Well, that's how it was with us. It wasn't that we ended at 5. That's when the instructors left. The instructors left at 5, and then we could stay however long we wanted.
Yeah. And then they had some nice stuff there, like an Xbox ping pong table. We killed that ping pong table. We were playing every day.
Right.
It was a lot. We're in downtown area, so there was a lot of places you could go to.
Sure. Yeah.
So it wasn't kind of you're just coding all the time. It was pretty social too, so it was nice. Yeah.
Did you find yourself coding on the weekends as well, or was your weekends pretty much just your time in this particular bootcamp?
We did the weekends.
Yeah.
There's sometimes it gets a little rough, and you kind of need to spend the weekends to kind of catch up. So we definitely spend the weekend, but weekends people kind of did their own thing. I went to a cafe.
Right.
A lot of people still went back to the boot camp because it was 24-hour access, so you could still go. So Yeah, weekends definitely coded. Yeah.
That's how mine was too, because I always felt very, very behind in my boot camp. Because a lot of people, or the rest of my cohort, they already had, a CS degree, or they already knew a different language. They were just learning iOS. So I was coming in with like nothing. So I was like kind of starting from way behind. So yeah, weekends were for me catching up, really.
Yeah. There's a few people with like, computer science degree or worked in IT or had another programming language experience. So
would you? So details. How many people were in your? Do they call ours cohorts? Is that what
yeah, we call them cohorts.
How many people were in your cohort roughly?
Ours was pretty big class. It was, including me, 18 people.
Okay, mine was 8 or 9, I think. So about half that.
Pretty large class. Yeah, just for iOS, and then the other cohort was there too for iOS.
Gotcha.
They were like maybe like 2 months before us.
Did you guys get to interact at all, or like did they help you?
Roughly, not a lot. No. Yeah, they had their own stuff going on, and we had our own stuff.
Right.
We say hi to each other, but we don't really talk much. Yeah.
So the reason I asked how big the cohort was, like, what percentage would you say already had a CS degree or prior programming experience? Would you say that was the majority or just a handful?
If I have to give a percentage, I say maybe around 20% or less.
Okay,
honestly.
so it was the minority.
Yeah. Most people came in kind of fresh, like me, no programming experience. But I know the other cohort had like a higher percentage, maybe like 35 or so.
Sure, yeah, I'm sure it varies.
So, yeah, I say around like 30% or less, yeah, usually.
The reason I wanted to get that answer was because in case somebody is considering going to a boot camp, I didn't want them to be intimidated thinking like, I know nothing, everybody's going to have a CS degree. So yeah, they were the minority for sure, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like meant for people without, any background. Like honestly, when I went to the bootcamp, I didn't even know much about HTML. Like I didn't even know what it was to begin with. So I just kind of went there with nothing.
Yeah. So it was Dev Mountain that you went to. This is not a sponsored video, even though we're talking about boot camps. But why did you choose them? Was there a lot of like shopping involved with boot camps, or were they pretty much like the only one? Because I know a lot of boot camps are kind of going away. Like the one I went to doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, they got bought by Hack Reactor, and then they pivoted into high schools. So I know there's not many left. So again, did you have to shop around a bit, or was this just the one?
Oh, I spent maybe a month like shopping, looking, doing research, because it's a lot of money, right? I did a lot of research. It's funny, Dev Mountain was the only one left that was doing iOS in person. There were like all the other bootcamps that did it previously, they just suddenly stopped doing the iOS program. So it was kind of like the last option, and they covered housing with the tuition, which was a big plus for me.
Yeah.
So a month of shopping around, but they were the only options pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have heard rumors. I don't know if it was from you, because I've talked to a couple people that went to Dev Mountain, but someone said I don't know if they show my videos there or they recommend my videos. Yeah. Like, did that happen with your cohort, or was it you that told me that? I think somebody told me that.
Yeah. So week 3, we learned about networking.
Right.
And you had a really good video on Grand Central Dispatch.
Yeah.
For people like, new to it, we're like, what the heck is Grand Central Dispatch? Like all the async and stuff. It's super confusing. But the mentors actually showed one of your videos. They recommended for people to take a look at to kind of get a better understanding. So they showed like a few videos. I was like, hey, I know that guy. Yeah, he's the reason why I kind of came to.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, they showed a couple of your videos. Most of my classmates know about you actually. In the iOS community. It's pretty awesome. Yeah,
it's kind of cool. I should start charging them. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I've heard it's great. I actually love it. I've heard of like colleges showing some of my videos, like some other classes and workshops showing it. So I've heard a lot of people say like people are showing your videos. So that's really cool. And that was obviously a joke about charging them. But so let's back up to before you went to the boot camp. You said you were preparing for a couple months before you did it. Did you feel like you were ready when you went? And when you got there, was like the first day like, oh my God, I'm in over my head, or were you like, I got this? You know what I mean? Like, what was your mindset when you first got there?
Yeah. So before you even go to the bootcamp, they gave a list of pre-course materials you're supposed to finish. So I'll just name a couple of them. It's the Big Nerd Ranch Guy book, the iOS one.
Yep.
Not the iOS, the Swift one. And then the Team Treehouse beginner course, you have to complete that. And there was a Apple documentation sample project you have to complete.
Right.
So by doing those, you are pretty much familiar with Swift already, like, object-oriented programming. And it took like maybe 2 months to complete all those pre-course.
Gotcha.
Going into the boot camp, it was scary at first because I don't know what to expect. But once I'm there, the first week was kind of simple. It was kind of like the basic stuff, like the outlets, basics. But definitely, you get kind of nervous because they don't really tell you much what to expect. So before preparing, I just kind of did the pre-course stuff.
Right.
That was it.
And they taught Swift from the beginning, right? No Objective-C?
No Objective-C. We spent 1 week on Objective-C just to know about it.
Right. See, mine was the opposite. So my story, and this is another reason I felt very behind during my boot camp. So I like giving my story contrasted to yours so people can see the difference. But mine was in Objective-C because this was summer of 2015, right? So Swift is not even a year old yet. It's 1.0, so it's very, very early. So they're still teaching Objective-C. We had 1 week of Swift. And that was the week I was like, yeah, I got this. Let's go. Because I didn't really learn Objective-C. I was learning Swift the whole time. So it's kind of interesting that how the education material has now shifted towards, everything in Swift. Because that is another common question I get. It's getting less and less common as the months go by of, should I learn Objective-C or should I learn Swift? I think the answer is pretty firmly now everybody's teaching Swift and it's just Swift moving forward.
Yeah, it's like even the lead mentor there, he was doing like Objective-C since kind of like the very beginning, like ever since he started doing Objective-C. He even said, it's shifting towards Swift. If you're new, you should kind of go towards the Swift route. But if you're still doing Objective-C, then you could stick to it or whatever.
Yeah.
And for new people, it's a lot better to get into Swift because it's easier for us and
for sure,
it's clean code, right?
So, I look at Objective-C even now, and I'm just like, get it away from me.
Man. Man, I look at it, I'm like, dang. Like the best thing that it helped me was when I look at Stack Overflow now, I could read Objective-C.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it. Yeah.
So I know my answer to this, and I'm curious about yours. Like, what do you think is the biggest valuable takeaway from the boot camp, right? Because obviously you have things like learning the actual code, the people you meet, working as a group. I don't know if you did a final project type thing. I'm assuming you probably did.
Yeah.
So I guess what aspect do you think was the most valuable now that you're like looking back on it?
I think the most valuable is that they took us literally from zero to having an app on the App Store.
Right.
That whole process of learning the language, learning how to build apps, learning how to use GitHub, and finally deploying that app onto the App Store. And just from zero to kind of like to 100, for example, just that whole process. And that to me was very valuable. If you don't live in the city, a lot of the networking events are within the Salt Lake City area. So it's kind of like pointless for me. I was looking at California, other cities. So the networking didn't help. The people was very valuable too. I still keep in touch with a lot of classmates. A lot of them has jobs. A lot of them are still looking, doing their own thing. So that connection of growing your network circle of iOS developers was pretty awesome. So I'd say like the experience of deploying apps and also the people that you meet and connect with was the biggest takeaway.
Yeah. That was mine too. It was the people and working together. I didn't feel like the code we learned was worth mine was 10 grand. What was worth the 10 grand I spent, but working, forcing me to do it for 10 hours a day and working in a group, learning Git and, dealing with merge conflicts and like you said, deploying in the App Store, the stuff you're not going to learn just doing tutorials by yourself was super valuable. So I want to transition into the job aspect of it, kind of like start wrapping up the boot camp, but we're going to transition into how you found your job. So you mentioned the people you keep in touch with, they all have jobs. For people wondering, like, should I do a boot camp? Is it worth it? What percentage would you say roughly actually have full-time jobs now out of your boot camp? But before you answer that, when did you graduate? Because it was fairly recently, right?
Yeah, it's like July, I think. Yeah, like so beginning of July, like about maybe a month and almost 2 months now since I graduated.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of the people that I keep up with, like some of them has a job already, but I honestly say the percentage is lower than 20% for sure. Yeah, that it's not high. It's honestly pretty rough for bootcamp grads sometimes because what they teach us in the bootcamp is that you're not going to graduate and get a job right away.
Right.
And that's honestly the biggest takeaway is that don't go to a bootcamp expecting to get a job in like a month. It's it's really rare. So, but they do teach you how to keep learning and how to build projects. And so right now I think the number's below 20% for sure.
But that's good insight because I think a lot of people might look at bootcamp as like a magic bullet. Like, if I just go to bootcamp, I'll get a job. I did get a job a month afterwards, but I've said it time and time again, that was not because of my programming skills. Like you said, you come out of a boot camp, enough, but you're not job ready fresh out of a boot camp,
Definitely
so if you do get hired quickly, like you said, it's rare. Consider yourself lucky, which I do. Like a company took a chance on me. They're like, we like you, we like your attitude and work ethic. We trust that you're going to learn this and get up to speed. It wasn't like you're a great programmer, we want you. So it's good insights for people that are thinking about a boot camp or are in a boot camp or going to one that like, you might not get a job right out of there, but they tell you that, you said, and they tell you how to like transition.
Yeah. We actually do a few days of job prep too. So kind of cleaning up your GitHub, have a LinkedIn account, have a portfolio website. Try to shoot for 2 apps on the App Store before you even consider applying. So little things like that could kind of get you set up for job hunting. But at the same time, they don't tell you like, hey, you're going to get a job like that. Like it's not going to happen.
So good segue. You mentioned your job hunting. Talk about that transition from when you graduated to what you did before you started applying. How many companies you applied to, and then stop right before the interviews, and we'll continue.
Okay, so right after the boot camp, the first thing I did was actually kind of polishing up my LinkedIn profile, my GitHub. I spent maybe almost a month fixing some apps that I had, and then so I deployed a new build. Like people need to understand, like as a boot camp grad, you're not going to have a CS degree. You're not going to have like 4 years of Swift experience. But what you can give is like you have these apps on the App Store. You love what you do. Like this is what you do. You want to keep learning, and you're willing to keep learning. So I think that's what a lot of employers want to look at. And then I just went on an angel list. Actually, that's how I got my job.
That's how I got mine too.
Nice.
It sounds like very, very similar.
Yeah. Because Angel List has a lot of startups, and they're willing to look for talents beyond the traditional your numbers of years on the resume and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Look more for culture fit. Yeah.
Exactly. Let me jump in real quick because I think people always shoot for, or they think they're going to go to the Facebooks of the world, the Twitters, the Googles, and
I thought like that too.
And it's like no, like you may get there eventually in your career, but you're best to start off at a smaller startup because, like you said, they're willing to take chances on people. You may not get average pay or pay a little less. You may not get the Google pay, obviously, but I think you shouldn't expect that just coming out of a boot camp. You know what I mean? No CS degree coming out of a boot camp, not knowing much. So I definitely like your approach to starting at a small boot camp, build up your career for a year or two, and then start looking to those. I always consider that first job as my launching pad.
Exactly.
It might not be the one I want, may not be the one I am at forever, but it's going to be the launching pad that starts my whole career. So that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, and you need people to take chances on you, right? And to love you because of your culture and because of you fit into their culture. You're willing to learn more, and you're willing to keep learning, and this is what you love to do. So you just gotta show that somehow.
Passion is a big thing, and if it's genuine passion, it's clear as day. They'll see it. Like you can't really fake that. And that's the thing about like big companies. They only look at numbers and resumes and paper. Like the recruiters won't even give you a call. Honestly, like. I look at your resume, they're just like, I'm not even going to bother calling. But these startups, they're willing to listen to you and see how you fit in. So AngelList was a really good site. That's how I got my job. I think I applied to around maybe 30 something. How many interviews did you get out of those 30?
I got around maybe 5, I say.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's actually a really.
I don't know if you heard my story. I think I did about 60 and got 3. So you did a much better percentage than I did.
My friend applied to I think like 200, and he only got like few. Wow, the rate was lower. I did use this one trick, so I applied on their official website. I actually don't apply on AngelList. I go on their website and apply. Yeah. And then I send a direct email to like the hiring manager or the CEO.
On AngelList?
No, on Gmail. I just like.
On Gmail. I got you. Yeah.
I use like Clearbit to get the email. It's a rough approach, but some people like that, right?
Do what you got to do.
Some people like that.
And oftentimes in these smaller startups, the CEO is the hiring manager. You know what I mean? Because if they only have 5 people, like,
Yeah, the company I applied for, I think, was only 8 people when I applied. It's a small company.
How many are there now?
We're at like almost 14, so they hired a few more people. Gotcha. They brought on a couple of customer service and other people. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah.
All right, so you got about 5 job interviews. What did you do to like prep for these interviews as you're getting ready?
Yeah, so I did first thing I did was to truly understand my code. If I'm going to talk about my apps, I want to be able to explain it very well. Why did I do certain things? Why did I use this, versus that?
Sure.
I also prep a lot about the basics of an iOS developer that I should know, like life cycles. I actually watched your video on that, like what to know. Life cycles, memory management, things like that, like being able to explain networking well, like HTTP requests and stuff like that. So I think I downloaded a PDF somewhere. I just kind of studied the basics of iOS. Interview questions prep. I think that's what it was called. Knowing my code in the iOS, iOS app. And yeah, honestly, I did have like one or two interviews that asked me about computer science stuff, and I was honest with them. I don't know computer science stuff. But I am willing to learn, but I do know my Swift very well. So it's very impossible to prep for everything. You know what I mean?
Well, especially those algorithm questions.
Right.
They call it the algorithm. They call it the algorithm lottery. It's like, what algorithm question are you going to get? If it's one you know or have done before, good.
So I had two that asked me CS stuff, and honestly, it was a no-go for me. I just didn't get it because I can't answer what they were expecting. So sometimes you just can't prep for everything. So I suggest just prepping for iOS development stuff. That's what you're going to do, right? So later on, you can build on your skills. So
sure, coming from a bootcamp grad with no CS background, I get what you're saying. But it's just, you have to know that realization if you are going to go that route, that the companies that ask you the CS questions and value that, just like you said, it just might be a no-go, and you just got to move on to the ones that are going to value the Swift stuff. You
can't prep for CS. You can't, you're fresh, you're new, you barely know the iOS stuff. You can't just prep the CS stuff. It's just not going to work.
So let's talk about the, I guess you kind of answered the next question I was going to take. What percentage did you say did like whiteboard interviews and CS type questions? Just 2 out of the 5?
2 out of the 5 did the CS, the very traditional one. The other 2 just kind of had a phone interview. One of them was for freelancing that I didn't take. I actually got that offer. I just didn't take it because I just wanted to. I know how inexperienced I am. I needed to be under someone, so I wanted it in person.
That's good.
The other one I didn't get. Sorry. So 2 CS. One of them I just got rejected pretty much. One of them I didn't took, and then I got the 5th one. I guess.
Right. Nice.
I think there was one more that I didn't get. So 6. Let's just say 6 interviews.
But still a good percentage out of the 30 you applied to. But I want to go back to that insight you touched on a little bit about not taking the freelancing as your first job. And I say this all the time. Excuse me. That you shouldn't take freelancing as your first job because, like you said, you're inexperienced, and most of the time you're going to be asked to manage the entire project and build the whole app yourself. And that's a tall order for somebody brand new that doesn't know much. And then you got to deal with a client who may be angry at you. It's just not a good way to start your career. I definitely like what everybody
wants that freelance life. I thought about it like, I don't know, I'm in Thailand and I'm coding like on the beach. Like I had that moments, but
it's a good life. Don't get me wrong. I did it for the past year and a half, but and you're going to learn so much more during that chapter of your career because you're going to be on 5, 6, 7 projects over that time span. Like you do a lot more. You just shouldn't start your career that way. That's all. So I liked what you said about you wanted to be under somebody, and that's what I recommend for any new developer for sure.
You work in like a team environment and you're learning things that maybe, they have company stuff that they do like GitHub or like the way they do things, maybe cleaner code that you really can't learn by yourself sometimes, right? So,
I call that the art of programming, right? Like tutorials and stuff will teach you how to program, how to build a table view, but like working under somebody senior will tell you the why behind it. Like, because oftentimes in programming there's multiple solutions, but like sometimes this one would be better, sometimes this one would be better, but it depends on the situation. And like knowing that art of when to pick what solution, like that just comes with experience that you'll learn from these senior developers.
Yeah, that's funny because in my bootcamp we learned shared instance, and honestly I did that from day one to like, until I graduated. And there are times when I'm like, why would I do anything else? It's so easy. And then the other day, a couple of days ago, one of the more senior developers told me like, oh, you shouldn't use shared instance because of this and that. You should do it like this other way. And he told me like the reasons behind it. I was like, oh, wow, I never know that, that makes so much sense. And it's something that I would have never learned by myself.
It's just like the analogy of like teaching somebody how to fish versus giving them a fish. You know what I mean? Like teach them the whys and the reasoning behind it so they can make the decisions on their own later. So, okay, cool. So you did the 6 interviews, got some offers. I want to ask this question because I know how my story went. How did you do any negotiating, counter offers? Like, how did that go? Or did you just say, I'm happy, just accepted it?
I talked to a friend afterwards. He's like, oh, maybe you should have negotiated. Honestly, I would have taken anything they offered me. Like, I even relocated, and I'd even asked them to pay for my relocation. That's how far I went. Like, I paid on my own for my U-Haul and for moving expenses. I was just happy I got an offer. Like, as a bootcamp grad, you have to understand it's kind of scary sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You could go on like a year or two without a job, and that's a reality that could happen. So being able to find a company that kind of accepted me and took me on, and being willing to give me a chance, I wasn't gonna ask so much. I just I'll take. I'll even pay you guys.
Mine was the same way. It sounds like we have a lot in common of how our paths went. Because, like I said, 60 applications, 3 interviews. None of them went well. Even the one I got didn't go well, and I knew they were taking a chance on me. So like when the offer came in, and it was, I've said it before, I don't care, I'll say it now. It was $60,000, which in, Silicon Valley is like below developer minimum wage. But I was just like, whatever, I'll take it. Like you said, I was like, I'll work for free. Because like I said, I always had this, back to what I said about the launch pad. I was like, I knew this was going to be a launch pad to my career. And I knew once I got in there for, 3, 4, 5 months or whatever, I would be justified in asking for a raise. You know what I mean? Like, I just knew I would go in there and kill it and, either ask for a raise, not get it, and be like, okay, now I feel confident enough to move on to another company, whatever. I just knew I needed to get my foot in the door. So I know a lot of people always say, always negotiate, always counteroffer. But like you said, it's scary. Yeah. It's scary.
It's scary, yeah.
And I just say, once you get your foot in the door, now you have a lot more control. And then now you can kind of dictate the path of your career. But getting your foot in the door and getting that first opportunity is very hard.
Yeah, I was willing to, work for free for like, 2 months, 3, if needed to prove myself, kind of like a testing period or whatever you call it, or even internships, like just anything to get me the foot in the door, like you said, was very valuable. And afterwards, getting that first job is probably the hardest thing, right?
For sure.
Afterwards, because when they look at your resume, it's bootcamp. Like that's the bootcamp. But after you get that first job, they see like, oh, you worked here for a year, like you contributed this and that, and that's more valuable. And honestly, I would just say go for it, get anything, freelance for free, whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. Yeah,
I like that because I did the same thing, and I want to emphasize that because I think a lot of advice people are going to get is to not do that. Everybody says, oh, your time is valuable, get paid for your time. Yeah, it's true to an extent, but like we just said, I won't rehash it. Like you got to get your foot in the door, and your career will be off and on your way. It's more like long term thinking rather than short term. You know what I mean? Like if you're just trying to negotiate and get that little extra money now, you could just really screw yourself over, and then it's like compound interest over time.
Yeah. Just think of it as like you're reinvesting into your education. Like this is a year of learning. Maybe.
Exactly. No, that's a good way to look at it. If you take much less pay or work for free, it's almost like paying tuition.
Yeah, you're paying tuition at college anyway, so you might as well do it at an actual job.
That's a good way to look at it. So so you're out of the boot camp, you got your offer, you started. You've only been at the job for about a week now, right? Like when did you tell us about? I
just finished my second week.
Finished your second week. All right, so tell us how that first week went.
Man, that imposter syndrome hit me like a truck. Like it was just like I went there, I had no idea what was going on. Honestly, they were using GitHub, but they were using Tower too.
Yeah,
I never even touched Tower.
Me neither.
I had to sign, some certificates. I had no idea how to do that because I've been always building by myself. I worked with maybe like 2 people, but signing certificate, getting like access to the private GitHub, like a lot of things I did not even know.
Yep.
Like before I even jumped into the code, I was just very noob. I just didn't know anything. It picked up a little bit maybe after like 3 or 4 days. I was starting to pick up the code base, but definitely, it was rough because that boot camp helped me a lot. But when I got to a real job, it was totally different.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of things that I did not know. The code base was huge. Like there were things that I don't even know what it does in there. You know what I mean? So
and every team is going to do things differently. Like you mentioned, they use Tower. That's never going to change every time you go to a new team. You're going to have to like relearn a new system every single time. And usually it takes a couple weeks just for a developer to get just familiar with the code base. Like you're just playing around in the code base, learning how things work before you're actually doing things. So building off that, I know you can't give specific details, but do they have you working on anything specific now? Or are you just doing like bug fixes, getting familiar, or are you actually starting to build some features? Or if you can even say...
Yeah. So first week kind of like was getting me situated, getting tower set up, getting some other things like Asana for like, team planning and things like that. Then they assigned some tasks for me. They were in like specific order that I has to finish, maybe some features. Some of them were bug fixes. So I did things here and there and just kind of like knock out one project at a time. So after I finished that first task, it was like the greatest feeling ever. It's like, oh, I actually contributed, I pushed it up and everything went well. And it was a great feeling.
You got your first accepted pull request. So I'm assuming they review your pull requests. Did you guys review pull requests in Bootcamp, or was this your first exposure to that whole process?
Oh, it's my first exposure. Like having someone senior, and being able to go through my code, give some suggestions. In the bootcamp, you could do a pull request for anything, right?
Yeah.
And you just like, you do a pull request and you just merge, and people have different code base.
There's no critique.
Yeah. At a job, you should have like, similar code. Some things could be taken out and put it somewhere else and things like that. So I'm a first pull request. He looked through my code. Everything was good. Just little fixes here and there. It was very productive, though, I would say. Yeah, just trying to get familiarized during the first week. Second week, I did a lot more things. Like I did a couple of bug fixes. I'm working on a feature right now, so it's pretty nice.
So you're moving pretty quickly. All right, so that covers your first week, and thanks for coming on again, Herman. And the reason, like I said, I wanted to have you on is because you've done the complete process that I think my audience is at various points in, right? You have no programming experience. You try to learn on the side. Maybe you do a boot camp. Maybe you do some other learning, and then you're trying to get a full-time job. You have gone from 0 to 100. Like you're there. You're doing it. So looking back now that you've completed the process and you're on your journey, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give for somebody that's still early on in that journey?
Yeah, so definitely, I spent a month looking at your videos before I even started learning anything iOS related.
I paid them.
I definitely say like, just go for it. It's $5, $10 on Udemy. Like I say Udemy is the greatest place to start, or even YouTube. But Udemy kind of like sets you up from like, oh, here's step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 4. Yeah. Pay $5. See how you like it first.
right.
Just learn. Just start programming. And if you find that this is something you like, maybe you could take on more online courses or even consider a bootcamp. And like Sean said, I was watching your videos. I had no programming experience. I didn't even know what HTML was before I started learning iOS. It's insane. Yeah. And being able to like, get to that job place, it was like a really long it felt long, but it's only been a year, right?
Is that how long? Like, we never talked about that. When did you actually start to like? What is the start date to hire date? Rough timeline. A year?
Like maybe 11 months now.
Okay, so not even a year.
Yeah, 11 months. So you just get started. Yeah, that's my biggest piece of advice. Just get started. It's good. I know I mentioned I don't have a CS. I actually don't even have a degree. So
there you go. That's good. No, that's good for everybody to know. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's possible. Like it's really possible. I was just an audience, watching your videos.
Exactly.
But just get started. Start punching out some cool apps, and then once you feel ready, you could go to a bootcamp. You could continue learning, and go to some meetups. And I'd say just get surrounded with iOS stuff, and you'll be job ready pretty soon too.
Yeah. And just to set the expectations, I did it in 7, he did it in 11. It's not a race. Yeah. That wasn't a brag. But I would say expect it in that 6 months to 2 years range, right? Like expect it to take anywhere in that window. It's going to be different for everybody. But yeah, so great piece of advice, Herman. Thanks for coming on. Like I said, that's exactly why I wanted to have you on, because you represent the audience. Many people are doing what are trying what you did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude, so happy to be on. Like, been watching you so long, so cool to finally be on the screen too. So pretty awesome to meet you. Nice talking to you, Sean.
All right, thanks, Herman.